experience. Myself and the team have met with hundreds of design managers from around the world. And oftentimes we ask questions, what problems are you facing? And what we found, and this tends to ring true through everyone, is high expectations without adequate support and resources. There's just an overall lack of resources for leveling up team members. There's no playbook at hand. It's different from organization to organization. There's oftentimes feelings of isolation and being ill-equipped for complex roles. And it's just difficult balancing hands-on design work with team management. And so what we've done is we've decided to create these webinars. Our goal is to foster an inclusive community for sharing experiences and learnings, not only from ourselves, but obviously from panelists and design leaders and managers around the world. Our goal is to provide top-tier educational content and mentorship opportunities, and really to tailor resources to the unique needs of design managers and leaders. So today, as we mentioned, we're going to try to hit on 4 key themes. Those are hiring, upskilling, handoffs, and team culture. Today, I'm joined with 2 amazing design managers. The first I'm going to go ahead and introduce is Lee Jeffrey, who's a UX team lead at Sage. For those not familiar with Sage, they provide cloud-based business management solutions, such as accounting, payroll, and payment solutions. He was previously at AutoTrader, where he had a focus on account accessibility and inclusive design. And a little, tidbit about him is he was also previously a web stack developer before transitioning into product management and design. Lee is heavily involved in the community, which is awesome. He's the founder of Natter Community, which is a volunteer-led UX and UI design education community based in Manchester. He's also a mentor at Design Club and a volunteer at Manchester Coder Dojo. He's the lead and UX Manchester facilitator and has been part of organizing and running 12 successful design events in 2023 alone. And he's also been shortlisted for Individual Making a Difference in the Community at This Is Manchester Awards in 2023. So Lee, I don't know if I missed out on anything. Would you like to add to that quick introduction?
Oh no, cheers for covering that. Yeah, lots going on there. But no, yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us, and yeah, looking forward to chatting through the topics.
All right, so our next speaker is Reese Flaherty. I was very, very terrified to try to pronounce that last name because I am an American and we're terrible at pronouncing anything other than, oftentimes things that are familiar to us. He's the UX lead at Fujitsu. He's in charge of leading UX initiatives, driving user-centered design within his organization. He's a senior practitioner with experience in research, front-end development, and interaction design. He's also, and this is a great thing, active in the community as also a part of Natter Community as well. With a big emphasis on mentoring aspiring UX professionals and fostering the next generation of design leaders. Reese, anything else you'd like to jump in and add before we move on?
Nothing from me. Just great to meet everyone, and really excited to speak through everything.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, we kind of themed this out through 4 main topics. The first one we're going to start with hiring, and the key question we really want to know is, how do you guys ensure you hire A players for your design team?
Let's kick that off, Reese. Yeah, I guess it's interesting how it's framed this around kind of like A players, because you talk about kind of, I guess, like design unicorns or people who can do everything. But I think when you look at teams and individuals, everyone's got kind of different skills across that matrix as you'll start kind of out on your journey in design, and you'll start picking up different skills. So I think it's really important as a design leader to kind of understand what you need from your team. So I guess there's quite a lot of different people on here with different size teams. It could be that you're on your own as a team, or there's like a team of 4. It could be that there's a team of like 20 or more. So I think depending on the design maturity of your team, it's probably kind of assessing where you are on your journey and kind of what you need. So it might be that you kind of, if you've got a smaller team, you'll need someone a bit more all-rounded skills who can kind of come in and do a bit of everything, because they're going to be wearing many hats. Whereas it might be, if you're in a bigger team, you're after kind of a specialism within the team, whether that be somebody who's quite big on accessibility, or is quite strong in kind of UI design. So it might be that you're looking for something specific. So I think with that, it would be maybe kind of analyzing what the need is from the team, and that will then start you on your journey of kind of what you are kind of looking for. I guess that's where I'd kind of start with that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, very much like we do when we go out and we talk to users and we understand their user needs, we should be doing something very similar within our own teams. So we should be understanding our team's needs and our team skills and our qualities and our values. For example, in Fujitsu, we do an internal review. So we do an internal review every 3 months. So when we get to the culture piece, I'll talk a little bit about that. But we do an internal review every 3 months and we see where everyone's at. So we identify skills gaps. We identify the qualities that our team has. And what you find from there is you can then start to see what your team doesn't have. And, if there is an area that's lacking, and that is what I guess, once you understand that, is how you begin to hire for an A player. You can't, an A player for every team, like Lee was saying, it just looks different. An A player for one team might be a senior user researcher. An A player for another team might be somebody who wears a load of hats because you've not got many people. So yeah, it really is about understanding your own internal needs first. And then it's also understanding your direction. So where do you want to be in 3 months? Where do you want to be in 6 months? What is the projects in your pipeline? What are they telling you? Is the projects that are recently coming up, for example, we're seeing a massive influx in interaction design. So we're seeing for the next 3 to 6 months, there's a massive influx of interaction design. So we're looking to at those demand signals and we're looking to hire in those areas. And that's what an A player looks like for us at the moment, is some interaction designers. So yeah, Lee, I'm not sure what you think about that, but.
No, I think you touched on a really important point there around kind of succession planning. So kind of understanding the needs of the team, and that will kind of evolve. Like you said, like you might maybe take on more projects. It might be that you want to bring a junior into the team because there's a big design team and you feel like you can support them on their journey and they can kind of learn quite a lot from the seniors and leaders around them. I think I'd touch on maybe kind of like diverse teams as well. So how you kind of deliver diverse, inclusive products as well. So that comes from the diversity in the teams and the different perspectives and what they can spot. So as you're building your teams out, kind of starting to understand the kind of diversity as well as the skills and the craft of the individual that's going to come into the team. What else are they going to bring from their kind of experiences that the team might be kind of lacking? So I think something around that as well is when you're hiring is to include kind of your team within that hiring process, because I know sometimes it might be that kind of leaders just do the interviews and the process and then they come through and you got to meet your team. But I think it's quite nice to get your team involved with that, so they can meet the people in the team. You can get their perspectives around this individual, how they will fit in the team, and I think it's a nice way of doing that. And like I said, like somebody who's kind of interviewing for that role, when they actually start, they've already kind of met 3 or 4 people in the team, so there's already that rapport. So I think that's quite a good method to use as well.
And honestly, bringing your team in on those interviews actually could be quite a good personal development opportunity for them. It's something that when we were talking outside of this, it's something that Lee, it's something that your team does, and it's something that our team does, is we get, maybe some kind of mid-level or even some junior involved in that interview process, because when do they get the opportunity to interview somebody? It's giving them those personal development opportunities, and it's giving them as early as possible. How are they going to grow if you don't give them those opportunities as early as possible? So that's something that we're really big on, and I'm quite glad that you've mentioned it. To be honest, it really is about gaining those different perspectives, and are they a good fit? Do they fit into our culture? And there's only one way to find that out, is actually getting those people involved, the people who make up our culture. And I think from there, though, is once you've started hiring and you want to try and hire an A player for your design team, the first thing that any person will see once you try to hire them. Once you understand what soft skills you require because you've done that internal review, once you understand the hard skills that someone's going to require, the first thing that anybody sees is actually a job description. And, you know, that job description is the first protocol when someone's trying to look for a job. So in that job description, you really want to sell the company. You want to sell the benefits. You want to get them excited about the prospects of working for your company. And in that, also making sure that it's short, it's sweet, you've not got too many paragraphs and you know, people have to read through. It's short and sweet. It's straight to the point. And you've also let them know how inclusive you are. Let them know a little bit about maybe the salary. Let them know a little bit about what the recruitment process looks like and how accommodating you are. I'm not sure, Lee, if you've got any other tips around kind of job descriptions or anything like that.
No, it's a really important point, that, Reece, because I think, like you said there, it's as much as you going out finding those kind of people to come into your team, but then, you know, you've got to sell yourself. And I think some stuff that we did through kind of the Auto Trader days and at Sage is kind of like, I think they labeled it as being famous. So it's kind of how you as a design team kind of sell your company and what you do. So that could be through like blogs, or it could be through like webinars like this or podcasts. So people can get a little bit of an insight into what it looks like to work at Sage or work at Fujitsu, and then they want to be a part of that team and part of that culture because it looks exciting. So I guess it's how you brand yourself externally as well. So there's definitely a piece around that as leaders to kind of shout about kind of what you do as a team and get that out there on different channels.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it gets people excited, doesn't it? But then I think once you've understood your internal needs, once you've then gone out to market and you started to write a bit of an attractive job description and you're trying to get people excited, you're doing your webinars and you're showing, you know, Fujitsu or Sage, you know, this is the company that you want to work for if you're a designer. And then once you've started the hiring process and you've started to get the team involved, actually screening is like a really important point. For example, you know, we put some job descriptions out, we've got over 400 applicants. You know, tons of applicants. The market's a little bit crazy at the moment. And we used like assessment tools. So I don't want to name drop, but the one that we have used is Uxcel assessments. And it's in like a beta version at the moment. But actually what that helps us do is tailor the questions when we went into the interview to essentially be able to ask, like, let's say they were lacking or they got like a 1 to 3 star rating on maybe some soft skills as an example. We could go into that interview and we could ask them questions around those soft skills, and we could try to get that out a little bit more from them. You know, you don't want to try to catch them out with those questions. You want to try and get it out of them and try to help them as much as possible, score as high as possible in those interviews. And I guess, you know, once you've screened them and once you've managed to get them in and you know that they're the right fit because you've got the team involved, I think the next thing, and me and Lee, when we were talking about it, was onboarding. So Lee, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about onboarding.
No, but I think that's like you said, I think we spoke about that, didn't we, around like, you know, you've done that process now of hiring kind of the best person for the role and they will start at your company. But if the onboarding process isn't there for them, they're going to struggle to kind of make an impact and start. So like, I think having packs together where they can kind of see the team or see where to go for how to get set up correctly, and how, because I think they're like lots of different teams can use different software, or it could be kind of like Miro, it could be FigJam, it could be Figma that you're using, or different design tools. I think there's a lot to do, and I think those first few weeks of onboarding into a company, I think especially like the size of Sage and Fujitsu, that there's so many people to meet and so many products to learn. So I think it's trying to help them get off to the best start by making that onboarding process. I know you mentioned someone went through that recently, and you kind of did a diary about it, and then was able to kind of put some stuff in place.
Exactly, that's what we did. So there was a person who came in quite recently, and we essentially, there's so many things you have to do. There's like 40 trainings to do, you know, and you have to do all your benefits, and you know, there's tons of things that you have to do when you join Fujitsu. But you know, it really does kind of guide you through it. So what we had is a senior member that recently joined. It's just kind of diarise everything that they did, start to finish, you know, all the different nuances and everything that he kind of went through. And from that, we created an onboarding pack. And what we also did was went out to other teams. So, you know, you don't have to create your own onboarding pack. There may be some nuances in your team, which is, oh, you need Figma licenses or you need training pathway licenses or anything like that. But actually, the onboarding process for your company might just be quite standardized. So go to other teams and ask them if have they got an onboarding pack. You know, you don't have to start from scratch with these things. And then I think once you've started to onboard them, and my big suggestions and one thing that we do at Fujitsu is as a leadership team, we will go out to meet that person almost as soon as we can, as soon as it's convenient. Put a face to a name. You know, we as we're doing now, we're speaking to, I'm not sure how many people are on. We're kind of avatars on a webcam. You know, it's personal, but it's not as personal as meeting face to face. You know, going for a drink, having a nice meal. So yeah, you know, once you've onboarded them, once you've kind of took them through that onboarding process, just go meet them as soon as possible and go and have a chat with them and really start to build like an in-person rapport. I think that's probably my last point on onboarding really would be that.
Yeah, I think it's something I've had to deal with, like with the remoteness of Sage, because I've got reports who are in kind of South Africa, for example, and I'm in kind of Manchester in the UK. So having to kind of build that rapport with somebody and build trust over the internet is takes a lot longer. So you have to kind of like adapt your tactics and spend more time with them to kind of that's going to only become more and more kind of the norm within the industry as we get kind of more remote roles. So yeah, I guess if you can't get to them in person, then understanding that, but then also kind of putting things in place to kind of double down on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to be honest, once we've kind of moved away from that, there was kind of the second question that we had was like, how do you balance hands-on design work and team leadership? And I thought this one was a really interesting question, and it got me thinking, because actually it's a question that I ask myself quite a lot, is how do I balance design work and team leadership? And I guess the first point I'd start with is delegation. Learning to step back and trust, and it's something that I learn. I'm still learning now, is being able to delegate and provide ownership. Understanding, similar to what we were saying before, with the team's needs and which individual has the skills that you require at any certain time, and always being on top of that. Actually being able to delegate, provide ownership, provide personal development opportunities for that person. You know, you can't run 7 projects at once, but what you can do is you can put your trust in people to help you run those projects. So Lee, I think when you were kind of talking about it, weren't you? It was you were saying something about lead by example, weren't you?
Yeah, I think it's that, like you've mentioned, around like setting expectations. I think so as you go into well, as I came into Sage, they've got kind of like 2 tracks. So there's leaders who are leaders of the craft, and then there's leaders who are more kind of management strategic. And I guess that their times will vary depending on if they're hands-on or not. So some of them might be kind of 50-50 split. Some of them might be more kind of 10%. And then the rest of it is more strategic or supporting the team. And I think it's something I had to kind of learn through going through kind of into senior and principal, is actually the more you kind of go up, the less designing you actually do. And you kind of, it feels a bit weird at first because you're used to having that tangible output that you've had around, I've kind of done this week and I can see it. Whereas now it's more of I've like helped somebody through a project this week, so it's less obvious, but you can see that if you look a little bit harder. So I think I definitely had to kind of learn through that. But I think, like you're saying there, if you leading by example is really important, because as a leader, people will look to you as like kind of the things you say or the things that you do or how you conduct yourself, and that will kind of flow down into kind of the leader that they want to be, or I kind of guess like a bit of like a role model mode. So yeah, I think it's that setting expectations, but then I guess being quite strategic about where you spend your time. So understanding if there is a high priority project which has got lots of focus around it, that's where you might want to spend some time, your efforts. And then if there's kind of lower priority projects or things that you feel like the team can support themselves, and just giving that chance. And I think as that people want to go to work to be empowered and have purpose. So I think sometimes kind of as leaders, if you do kind of control everything, people can't grow. So you've got to give people those kind of stretch assignments and help them, but be there to support. And I think that's where you influence more through kind of what you do. So at those touch points that you have with the team, like crit sessions or show and tells, or you have like the one-to-ones or to like team catch-ups, you need to kind of use those times to kind of influence and yeah, I guess show how you kind of want to promote the way you do design, or just through those touch points, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we were talking about this, and it's those key projects, and especially at the inception point, you want to start and you want to instill confidence in the stakeholders. So typically, what I might do is I might be a little bit more hands-on on those key projects, those strategic projects that come through. But I may allow like a junior or a mid-level that I might kind of hand that project over to I think the word shadow's used quite a lot, but I don't really like the word shadow. I prefer like learn and assist. Because that's what they're doing, is they're learning and at the same time they're assisting. Yeah, I don't really like the word shadow. It's kind of insinuates that they just sit in the corner and not really do anything. So yeah, that's kind of what I always think is. So I might go in there, kind of provide like a strong front, and not to say that they can't, but really go in there, really set the scene, really, understand what the plan is, understand what the roadmap is, understand what the requirements are. But at the same token, they're with me and they're assisting, and they're learning at the same time. And then once, the project seems like it's kind of underway, then maybe I take a little bit more of a step back, and then I move into more of a role where actually maybe we have a morning stand-up, and it might be just a one-to-one morning stand-up where we're having a chat, and maybe we do a little bit of a design review. And when I'm reviewing the design, it's always even better if it's not, oh, actually, I might have done that a little bit better. It's I see that, but it'd be even better if you did this. So it really just kind of that constructive criticism. You don't want to, for a better way to put it, shoot them down. You want to give constructive criticism. So next time you see that, they'll be like, oh, actually, I remember that. So it'd be even better if I did this. And then, if they feel like they need it, you might have like I've done it a few times. It's almost like a PM one as well. So like a wind down of the day. How's the day gone? Have you got any blockers? So you got one in the morning, you got one at night. And then throughout the day, that they still have that ownership, and they still can do that project, and they don't feel like you're constantly, how's it going every 2 seconds. So yeah, I think that there were some of my points, I think, on that is that design review. It's maybe taking a lead in thought in some of those more strategic projects where it's maybe a longer term contract and you want to really hit the ground running on it. So yeah, I think that those were some of the key points there. And then talking around like your juniors, talking around kind of your mid-levels and things like that. Lee, I've got a question for you. What is your secret sauce for skills development?
I think when you talk about skills development, I think because I often kind of think this around kind of my team, because it's interesting because you say secret sauce, but I think like every individual maybe has kind of a need or somewhere where they want to maybe focus on and develop, and maybe you can put that in different levels. So maybe there's an individual kind of level, and then there is maybe like a team level. So you've identified something that the team needs to build on, or you've identified what this individual needs to work on. And I think that's where I sometimes try and give ownership to the individual to try and do that self-development themselves. So it's people who take that initiative to kind of understand where they are on their journey, where they want to get to, what their passions are. Because I think as you're kind of growing as a designer, you're growing in the skills that you do and the craft and the capabilities, but then there's also kind of those softer skills that you need as you're growing. So just like collaborating, communicating, storytelling, and then also kind of what passions they've got outside of the role. So I know we talked about a lot of the community stuff that we do, but if you have like a passion to get involved with something, even if it's outside of design and it's something within the company, like it's volunteering or it's doing something within kind of, as an example there, Sage, it's outside of design, but you're still kind of contributing and feeling fulfilled. I think it's how you kind of understand what that development process looks like, and as a manager, kind of supporting that. And I think on the team level, there's obviously things you can do to identify that and put things in place, whether it would be training tools, etc. But also kind of a big one are design days as well. So if you do a design day, which is every month or every 2 months or once half yearly, I guess focus on those key elements that you think that the design team probably need to upskill in, or if it's something new in the industry like AI, for example, base a design day around that, or you can put different topics in there. So you can also drive and influence kind of that training through the things that you put in place, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's very similar to, so when we did our kind of internal reviews, we understand where actually there's some parts where people would like to learn a little bit more. And one of those was Figma. So what we did is we got some resident experts in Figma. I was one of them, and then we got 2 others. And we put on a pretty funny kind of quite light Figma crash course, and we did it ourselves, and we used like kind of training pathways as well to kind of, so the first week was 45 minutes and very hands-on. Everybody got their own page in Figma. If you know Figma, you can add pages. Each one got a name. We split it into breakout rooms, so people who've used Figma before and people who haven't used Figma before. And then we came up with a dummy project. So it was like a Fuji sound festival. And we went through like login screens, and we went through kind of like home screens. And the end goal is to really create all these different screens and show how to make components, teach people about padding, spacing, and color theory and all these things. And after the second week, we had 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes was, you'd essentially set some homework. So they might go off and they might learn about UI components for that week, and then you come back in and like, oh, you've not done your homework, or you've done it, congratulations. So something like that is obviously really nice to do. It's actually really fun. The amount of people that were using like really horrible fonts, but just like for a laugh, I don't know, it was definitely something fun to do. And the people hosting themselves, for example, I was diving deeper into Figma, and a lot of people know you learn by teaching, and that's really a good way to cement everything. So I was actually learning quite a lot about Figma myself whilst creating some of these like little courses and stuff. And then another thing that we do at Fujitsu, something that I came up with because the way that we built our team was based around apprentices. So I built the first kind of UX team in the UK, and it was apprentices, and we needed some more senior people in, and we call it kind of this top-down, bottom-up approach. So we brought seniors in, and we had our kind of our, I guess, juniors or mid-levels, and the goal really there was to bridge that gap. So we do kind of that assist and learn. We do like lunch and learns and things of that nature where they shared their skills. And what we saw was actually the gap started to close because we learned the tips, we learned the tricks, we started to build that best practice in. So yeah, I think that was one that really worked for us, was actually starting to bring in more senior people in the areas that obviously you might have some skill gaps, and start to bridge that gap and be proactive with it. But Lee, I don't know if you've got any others there.
No, it's like you say, it's how you get those skills and teach people across the team, and I think it leans into kind of like communities of practice quite a lot. So that's something that I've been kind of on a journey with over the last couple of years. I think one of the best resources there would be like Emily Webber. If you've heard of her, go and check out her book on communities of practice, because I think, like you mentioned there with the Figma kind of project, if you can spot an area where people have got passion and people want to come together, it could be 2 or 3 people, it could be 10 people, it could be 30 people. If they come together on a common cause and want to kind of drive change within the business, and they get purpose and they get empowerment out of doing it, and they will kind of excel in those softer skills as they start doing teaching, etc. So I think the communities of practice is a massive way to try and I guess make impact across the business and give people empower people to make change, I guess.
Yeah, I do love communities of practice, to be fair. You know, we've got one around research, got one around design, got one around content design. And then you have like I guess an overarching one where everyone kind of comes in. It's like, oh, this is what we've done this week, or this is what we've done over the past few weeks. So yeah, it's definitely a really good way to set up your structure and empower each individual discipline to you know, drive kind of their best practice and how they want to work. But I think talking of kind of like best practice and all that type of thing, Lee, have you got any best case practices for design handoff?
Yeah, I think when I seen this question, actually, I think it was around the term handoff, and I think probably trying to maybe come away from that as a term and thinking it of a kind of like, I know people, there will be kind of handoffs within the cycle, but I think at Sage we kind of have like a ways of working, and we start understanding kind of what does the process look like and how is everybody involved, and we kind of use the RACI matrix around kind of where's everybody kind of involved and in that process. And I think it's just trying to drive kind of bringing everyone on the journey from the beginning. So how do you kind of get development at the beginning, kind of having those questions around kind of technical capabilities, trying to innovate as well, because obviously I think if depending on what business you're in, sometimes you can have kind of technical constraints around kind of digital transformation and building on older systems, etc. But you don't want to kind of stop you from innovating as well. So kind of bringing everyone on that conversation. But I think roles and responsibilities, like we mentioned earlier as well, just understanding where everybody sits within that process, how people want to work. I guess like we've mentioned there around teams and team sizes and who's involved, that could be quite different in many organizations. People might be wearing different hats. But I think as long as you've got like a clear process of this is how we want to work, these are our values as a team, and this is how we kind of work together, and you're kind of on that journey together. So you're delivering a feature or a common goal together, and you're on that journey. It's not kind of like, this is my bit, no, this is your bit, this is your bit. Even though there will be kind of like crossovers in that journey, but I think that's where you kind of stop that cycle of kind of getting to a point and going, hang on, this doesn't work, but let's need to go back to the beginning. So you try and you find those problems up front, and you don't kind of run into a situation where you're like, well, this we technically can't build this, we need to go to another direction. So I think it stops things like that, and how you kind of maybe have to circle back a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to be honest, the word handoff does kind of, it just insinuates you kind of have a load of work, you just, all right, there you go, see you later. So yeah, I completely agree with that. And you know, I think most of us know this, if not all, is everybody should be involved in the process right from the beginning. Your crazy eight shouldn't just be your designers. You should have some developers in there. You should have some stakeholders in there. And you might find it quite difficult to you know, actually maybe ideate as well as a designer might be able to. But you know, there's ways that you can work around that. You know, for example, you could get them to just write their ideas down in text, or you know, something along those lines. So it doesn't always have to be them creating this perfect design straight away, and having them just kind of always involved. And if they don't understand, and I think I'm going to probably get to it at the end anyway, but it's like making an impact. So coming into the project and understanding that the people, the stakeholders, they may never have dealt with user experience before. Show them what your process is, show them how you work, show them what you'd like to do, you know, show them how you're going to run this project from start to finish. Put the meetings in way in advance, make sure that meeting is well agended, so they understand their roles and responsibilities within that meeting and what they're required to do and what the tangible outputs are of it and what the benefits are. So not just being asked to do this thing called crazy eights. I had to change the word crazy eights because I called them try to think tiles because people just seen crazy eights and they didn't quite understand it. So yeah, I think that's a really important one is if they don't understand or you want to have them constantly evolve, so it's not just this handover. And as a consultant, you don't want to just hand off ever. So we always want to stay within that project. So, we at Fujitsu, we almost like a consultancy. So we're consultants on many different projects and we want to continuously improve. We want to do continuous discovery. We don't want to just give a design over and then that's it, done. But then we have to go and find another project. Or we want to stay on that project for as long as possible. That person wants to be embedded in that team. So, it kind of benefits your team as well to stay embedded and have that continuous line of communication open and let them know that, once that design's handed over, that's not it. There also needs to be us helping, us assisting, us doing remediation work, us continuously doing research, because then you might be able to put a user researcher on there. You might be able to put another designer on there. So, it's looking for those opportunities as well to be able to grow your team.
Yeah,
and then I think another big one, Lee, you could probably touch on this, but it's like inclusivity and making sure that, we keep using this word handoff, but making sure whatever's provided, is inclusive.
No, yeah, I've made some notes there as you was talking through. I think kind of as you was mentioning there around like what is it that you're actually building? What is the value? What value are you adding through this kind of feature? And like you say, if it's a developer gets like a user story and it's kind of like to add a button on a page or kind of create a form, it's actually bigger than that. So it's kind of like you said, that communicating what is the value, what is the bigger goal that they're going towards. And I think learning as well through kind of not everything's perfect, not everything's going to work perfect. You're going to get breakdowns in communication. You're going to have to work together. You're going to have to get through that, and having kind of like retros to talk about that and highlight kind of how you might improve processes. I think, like you mentioned there, a big one we've had is kind of Figma. So people like designers creating Figma files, but then kind of it being kind of created and then coming back and it's changed, and the developers are like, well, this has changed since I was last in it. So putting processes in place where you can kind of do version control on that, and that just comes through like feedback, because I think in those situations people can get quite angry or annoyed about how that's working, but actually it's kind of just come together. What's your preferred method of working, and then share that across the business. Like this is how we kind of work, and kind of create Figma files and version control and educate people. I think, as you mentioned, through those Figma sessions that you do, if people don't know how to do version control, how can you educate them and do it kind of hands-on as well? So I think like talk about like inclusivity in there as well. So I guess there's embedding accessibility within that, the design process. So I guess there's a few ways you can do that through like champions networks or champions in the team champion that. I think QA is the biggest point where you can kind of have an impact on accessibility, but it should be flowing all the way through kind of your process anyway. I think a big one for there would be, especially in my remote world, would be like the sync versus async working. Like I think sometimes it's quite easy if you are in a remote world to become siloed. So when you are working on projects, it's kind of like how are you catching up on your meetings, or how are you catching up kind of like async on chat, and how that all works as a team. And again, everybody works differently. And I think that's where sometimes communication can get broken down if like someone's kind of reading a message and they're reading it wrong and stuff like that. So I think it all comes down to kind of like ways of working again. But like I said, there's no silver bullet into this is how you deliver a project, because organizations, teams, systems can be different. It's how you continuously learning, adapting your environment, and just trying to understand as a team what works best for you, and what works, how this team's delivering, and how you can kind of be better, I guess.
Yeah, and I think with quality assurance, it's maybe having a checklist. So something that your designers, your junior designers, your mid-levels, your seniors, they can go through and have you defined like the error, success, and loading states for the screens. Is the design's accessibility audited? are all the assets exported in correct formats and optimized? So you can kind of just look through. It's like, okay, I'm about to kind of hand this over. Have I considered this tick? Have I considered this tick? Have I considered this tick? So yeah, I think they're kind of quite important things. Is that quality assurance? You don't just hand something over. It's got spelling errors, and you forgot a really important state, or you've not got your active states in there, your hover states in there, and developers are coming back to you and going, so just kind of preempting that, maybe having a bit of a checklist people can go through, or so something along those lines. I think it could be quite good. So what would you say, Lee, your unique traits of your design team culture?
Yeah, because I think with culture, obviously you'll have an organizational culture, which you'll kind of buy into as an organization. So you'll have values and how you work and what the business culture is. And then I guess you see designers might be like a bit of a subculture of that. So you'll have kind of your own values around how you kind of deliver design. And I think it's quite key to make sure that the team feeds into that. So it's not something where, as a design leadership team, you just say, right, we want to kind of empathize, we want to be inclusive. It's like, how are you driving that through the team and the values? So they're going to be more kind of bought into it. I think, yeah, culture can kind of have many strands to it. I think we've already mentioned stuff around kind of how you connect and inspire the team. What does it feel like to be a designer for a day at your company or a week at your company? How are you kind of keep learning and stretching yourself, and so through your project work, but how is the company kind of developing you? So I guess, like you mentioned there, there's like design days, like lunch and learns. I guess, where's those opportunities that you are kind of embracing coming to work, and there's lots of different things that you can get up to. And I think it comes back to that kind of purpose, as like we mentioned before, around why do I get up today and come into kind of work? What's my purpose, and what value am I adding to this environment? And the culture really drives that around kind of what you can get involved with. So
yeah, so in Fujitsu we do I think two things, I guess, are unique to our design team culture. I don't know if these are unique, but every 3 months we do an internal culture review, almost like a bit of a retro. So similar to, as I was saying before, where you're using kind of your user research, use those same processes to understand your own internal needs, just like you would user needs. So we do kind of like this fully anonymous bit of research where all the team gives feedback, and we have kind of some of our user researchers go in and interview everybody. And we ask, is there any issues, any problems? But at the same token, what are we doing quite well? And then we analyze that, feed that back to the team completely anonymously. And from there, we come up with solutions. If there's problems, we come up with solutions to them. And then for the next 3 months, we try to implement those solutions. For example, having, a bit more in-person meetups was maybe one of the things that was mentioned. So the next 3 months, that's what we've implemented, to try to put faces to names a little bit more and remove the barriers of kind of what remote is doing to us. And also any positives, we've taken them and, okay, how can we keep doing that? So it's really about, keeping on top of your design team culture by proactively researching through it and speaking to everybody about the culture, because that, your team makes that culture. And the other one that I think is quite funny is just personal goals and projects. So this has been a real hit that we implemented, was kind of every week we say how people are doing on their personal goals and projects. So there's some people who have made pasta, some people have done the crocheting. So I think there's going to be some kind of crocheted phone cases or crocheted phone case holders coming out to the team at some point. So, little things like that, where it's like your personal goals and projects. It doesn't always have to be about work, or it doesn't always have to be about design. What are people's personal interests, and getting them, I guess, in those meetings, and just having a chat about that. It doesn't always have to be about work. I think that really helps the team culture, doesn't it?
yeah, that's massive, that research. And I think when you start getting into kind of emotional intelligence and kind of psychological safety, like what environment do you want to build to support your team and the people within it? Because everyone's got different personalities. Some people prefer to kind of like the introverts, the extroverts, and how they interact with sessions, and how they like to maybe they want to read stuff up front before they go into a meeting, or if they get into a meeting, it's quite a lot of big discussion, and they kind of don't feel like they can maybe speak out, or they want to kind of follow up afterwards and stuff. It's like making that inclusive environment, especially I think we spoke about crits before as well. So getting feedback as a designer can be quite daunting if you do it for the first time. You've spent a lot of time on this design and put a lot of effort into it, and then it, let's say, it gets ripped apart, but people are giving kind of advice, and sometimes people aren't ready for that. So I guess creating that environment where you are kind of clear on like what feedback is, and how it drives the team forward, and yeah, I think making it like an inclusive environment, psychological safety, and like you said, having that emotional intelligence that, you know, people are human, you know, they've got lives, they've got children, things are going on in life, so not everybody can turn up to work 100% all the time. So it's like, how do you support your team? And like you said, have those little times where it is kind of a bit of fun at the end, to kind of like celebrate and kind of build those relationships and connections together, because it's really important as well.
How are we doing for time?
I'd say we have about 10 minutes left. So, you know, if there's any final kind of things you'd like to add, you know, we can probably reserve 1 or 2 more minutes left.
I think we had, so I think the last question was, what would be 2 tactics you could share with others that are necessary to improve design literacy across your organization? 2 things for me would be, you know, the first one is impact the project that you're on. If you get an opportunity to go on a project, very much like a small business might build, is word of mouth. If you go on a project, impact that project, lead by example. You know, you can't, I guess, bang the drum if the projects that you go on, you're not really making an impact, and you're not being able to prove the success of that. What are the tangible outcomes? What's the kind of, you know, if you were to do research on it, have you managed to improve any KPIs as an example? You know, what's the real outputs that you've made? You know, implement the best practice, upskill the team, the ways of working. So, you know, once you've impacted that project, you can use it as a case study, and then you can start to bang the drum, you know, and then you can say, I've done 2, 3, 4 of these. You know, you might want it as well as a team. So yeah, I think that would be my first one. The second one would be kind of, you know, if you are struggling, connect the dots. So for example, in Fujitsu, we have employee experience and customer experience, and they do something very similar to user experience. And we kind of just joined forces with them, and then, you know, identified some senior stakeholders who are really interested in user experience. And then, you know, also tried to globally join that together. So we created a global design network and joined Japan and Poland and Finland together, and, you know, helped influence Japan change over to Figma and change over to kind of Uxcel. So, you know, it was very much a case of try to join the dots, and, you know, if you are a solo person or a small team, look elsewhere and see how you can kind of grow your team. It doesn't have to be where you're working. It could be in a different country, or it could be on a different team within the UK. So yeah, that would, I guess, there would be my 2 kind of tactics to improve that.
No, definitely. I think the only other thing to, yeah, I guess you've got probably people who are on, again, different journeys that are on the call. I guess it would just be looking at that design maturity model, seeing kind of where you sit and what work you need to do. So it might be that you're a designer and you're reporting into marketing, and you've got some way to grow that design team, and you kind of need to help scale that team, and then help the company become more user-centered. It might be that's already kind of the case. So I guess just understanding where you are on the journey and having a clear understanding of what goals you want to achieve and how you might do that from some of the tactics that you just mentioned there, Reese.
All right, well, wonderful. I mean, this has been incredibly informative. I'm going to quickly jump into the Q&A because I know we don't have too much time. Just want to let everybody know we will try to answer all these questions. Sophia will be following it up. We will be hosting an AMA next week as well with both Reese and Lee. So with that said, I think it's a great question because it's very pertinent to what a design leader and manager does, acting as the intermediary between stakeholders and design, right? So as head of design, when should you allow commercial requirements from stakeholders to take precedence over best practices in UI, UX design? Specifically, if stakeholders request a feature design element that you know is flawed or not user-friendly, how should you handle this situation?
I guess that comes as a designer. It's how you kind of influence change through like clear rationale to why things should work in a certain way. So as a designer, you are the professional there giving that advice. So I think as you start building, I think like if you look at like design systems now, which are part of any kind of big corporation, we've got teams like looking after design systems. So once you've kind of designed something and built a solution in a way, you kind of use that as a building block to kind of do that across your kind of products and services. So once you make something accessible and it's like best practice, that becomes best practice across what you try to achieve across different product areas of your business. Unless you kind of it doesn't fit the need, then you might need to kind of reinvent that somewhere else. So there's always going to be that balance between kind of commercial versus what's right for the user, and there'll be kind of that sweet spot in the middle. But again, it's all about kind of building relationships together, understanding not everyone can win those battles, and sometimes you might have to kind of take a loss on that one and come to the next one. But I think it's all about kind of showing value, and I feel like Reese mentioned before about case studies. That's where actually celebrating success and what you do as a UX team can influence future decisions, because how you've kind of conducted yourself and the impact that you've had, people will see the impact and then listen to you next time. So I think it'd be kind of showcase. That's where it's really important to showcase what you do and the value that UX is adding, I guess.
Reese, anything to add there?
I was just going to say, ultimately the stakeholder pays the bills. So you want to keep them sweet, and you might end up taking a hit every now and again, but I've found a lot of stakeholders like to work with stories, so they like to see, okay, so we're making this change here. Where have we already done that at some point? Like you were saying, Lee, where have we already done that in the past? And what was the outcome of that? Was there any KPIs that they might be interested in? If it's private sector, was some KPIs that were quite beneficial to the company as an example. So yeah, really try to work in stories and say, look, this is very similar to what we've done over here, if that's an option, and this is what the output was. So, maybe it's a good idea to do that.
Yeah, I think my tiny tidbit there is also data trumps all. If you can collect any data even before you go to development and able to present that, it also helps your argument that much more. One more question that we're going to go. This is turning back to hiring. As a hiring process goes, what is the weight of the portfolio for both of you? How important is it to be online, or is it fine to just send the file via recruiters?
I think the portfolio kind of has two purposes. So the first purpose is to get you into the room. So it needs to be, if I'm kind of reviewing CVs and looking at a portfolio, I will kind of skim through the different portfolios, trying to get a grasp of the different skills that person has through the different projects. So if I think a sweet number there is 3 or maybe 4, and it showcases different skills within their design process. And if it's clearly articulated, I can skim through. It matches kind of what I need. I will then bring them into the interview process. And I think it's in there where it has a different purpose, where it's kind of, now it's your time to kind of go through your rationale to why you made these decisions, because it's not necessarily I will be able to get that from just reading through it. So that's where you are able to kind of story tell how you went about that. And I think the biggest thing that I see is I think people sometimes aren't as honest as struggles they've had. So what have they done through that project which they've learned? Did they make a mistake? Did they have to come back and iterate something? It's not all kind of perfect, the design cycle. You learn things and iterate. So kind of be honest around how you kind of maybe ran into challenges and then didn't use that resilience to kind of get through that and try something else, I guess.
And yeah, I think for me, especially if I was to comb through, as I have quite a lengthy amount of CVs, having that portfolio as accessible as possible is a major win. If you can, I don't know, click a link, or if you have to download a file, if you run through 100 of them, you have to download like 50 files or something. It's very much a case of, if you could have that as an online link, I think it's really beneficial. And yeah, I think like Lee said, all the kind of your standard things around that portfolio, can they, if it's a designer, can they link a change in a website to a KPI, and do they show what that tangible outcome is, and do they story tell? Are they good at reflection?
Yeah, I think
Oh, thank
differentiators
you.
as well. How do they stand out amongst others? So I'm going to see like 5 or 6 different CDs or portfolios. What's that little bit about them that makes them different, a bit personal? Again, we talked about kind of diversity and bringing people in teams for craft and capabilities. Kind of how do you see them fitting in the team? So that's where that personal brand element comes in, I think.
Makes sense. Colin, is there anything you'd like to add from your side, or?
No. Please take it away.
Okay, well, since we are very, very short on time, I'm sorry I have to like cut our conversation short, but I wanted to thank you all for joining today and recently. Thank you for the lovely chat. I could personally learn a lot, and I think the attendees did as well. For everyone who didn't get their questions answered, so we'll be hosting an Ask Me Anything session with recently next Tuesday on our Discord community. We'll send you a little bit more info in the following few days via email, and a couple of more things before you all go. If you'd like to give Uxcel Teams a try, we'll be providing everyone who joined today with a 30-day free trial. We'll send you more details in that email I said. And also, as designers, we're really interested in learning more about your experience and also like focusing on improving the UX. So we'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts on how you liked this webinar. Did you learn anything? If so, yeah, let us know. Once again, Risley, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us today. And yeah, hope to see you all soon and on Tuesday on your AMA session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lee, Reese, thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Cheers.